Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another wild neighborhood drama. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Have you ever had a moment where something so innocent, something so ordinary, turned into an all-out war with your HOA? Well, let me take you to the day it all began. Because what started as a calm afternoon by the lake ended with flashing police lights, shouting neighbors, and an HOA Karen who finally learned she couldn't bend the law to her will. The lake behind my property wasn't just any lake. It was the crown jewel of our neighborhood. Families fished there, kids splashed in the summer, and joggers enjoyed the trail around it. But there was one small detail that most neighbors either didn't know or simply didn't care about. That lake, technically, sat on the boundary line of my property. Half of it was under HOA jurisdiction, but the other half, the side I owned, belonged to me. And that's where the storm brewed. It was a Saturday morning. The sun was high, the breeze soft, and I decided to take out my small fishing boat. Nothing fancy, just a rowboat with a cooler of drinks and a couple of fishing rods. I paddled out, humming to myself, enjoying the kind of peace you only get when you're sitting on still water. But peace never lasts long when Karen's around. She appeared at the edge of the trail like some kind of neighborhood warden, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her nose, lips pinched so tightly it looked painful. "You can't be out there," she barked, her voice carrying across the water like a siren. I blinked, confused. Pretty sure I can. This half is my property." Karen's face twisted. "The lake belongs to the HOA. You can't just float around like you own it." I laughed, thinking maybe she was joking, but her glare told me she was dead serious. I tried to explain, calmly, that I had the property deed, that the water line cut through my land, and that what I was doing was perfectly legal. But Karen wasn't hearing it. She stomped her foot, whipped out her phone, and in her loudest, most theatrical voice declared, "I'm calling the police. Right now!" The neighbors walking nearby stopped, staring in disbelief. Some chuckled. Others shook their heads. Me? I just leaned back in my boat and sipped my drink, watching her dial 911 as though she was reporting a bank robbery. At that moment, I had no idea just how far this was about to go, or how badly her little stunt would backfire. There's a certain kind of silence that falls when flashing lights appear. The neighbors who had been smirking or shaking their heads now gathered closer, curiosity pulling them like moths to a flame. Karen stood tall on the bank, one hand planted firmly on her hip, the other pointing at me as though I were some dangerous criminal who needed to be hauled away. The squad car pulled up, tires crunching gravel. Two officers stepped out, one older, grizzled, with the calm air of someone who'd seen it all, and the other younger, clearly still new to the job but sharp-eyed. They both took in the scene, then glanced at each other, probably wondering why they'd been called out for something so ridiculous. Karen wasted no time. She stormed up to them, heels clacking, voice rising. "Officers, arrest him! He's trespassing on HOA property, endangering the peace of the neighborhood, and refusing to comply with community rules." Her performance was Oscar-worthy. She waved her arms dramatically toward the water, where I sat lazily in my boat, rod dangling over the side. The older officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, slow down. Who exactly are we talking about?" "Him!" she shrieked, pointing at me as though I were the villain in a Scooby-Doo episode. "He thinks he owns the lake." The younger officer walked closer to the shore and called out to me. "Sir, mind coming over here for a second?" I rowed back toward the dock, calm as could be. When my boat bumped against the edge, I stood up, handed the rope to the officer, and said, "Morning, gentlemen. Beautiful day, isn't it?" Karen huffed. "Don't play innocent. Show them your deed. Show them the paperwork. You can't just—" I cut her off gently. "Actually, I can." The officers looked between us. "All right," the older one said. "Let's see what's going on here." I walked over to my porch, grabbed the folder where I kept my property documents, because, with Karen, you always had to be ready, and handed them over. The younger officer scanned the highlighted map while I explained. This side of the lake is within my property boundary. I maintain it, I pay taxes on it, and as you can see, it's clearly marked. The HOA doesn't own this section. Karen's jaw dropped. That can't be right, she screeched. The HOA owns everything. The older officer looked at her flatly. Ma'am, according to this deed, he's within his rights. He's not trespassing. The crowd of neighbors chuckled. Karen's face turned red, but she wasn't done yet. Not even close. If you thought being proven wrong in front of half the neighborhood and 2 police officers would humble Karen, you'd be mistaken. For her, reality wasn't something to accept. It was something to fight, twist, and scream over until people gave in. Karen stomped her foot so hard on the gravel that dust puffed up around her heels. "This is outrageous," she barked. "That lake is for the community. We have rules, we have bylaws, we have—" The older officer raised a hand. "Ma'am, please lower your voice. We've established that he's on his own property." But Karen wasn't listening. She turned toward the crowd of neighbors, rallying them like a general before battle. "Do you all hear this? He thinks he owns our lake. Our lake. If we let him get away with this, he'll fence it off, he'll charge us to swim, he'll build a casino on it." The neighbors broke into laughter. One man called out, "Karen, it's a fishing boat, not a casino." Another woman muttered, "She's lost it." The younger officer stifled a grin but quickly composed himself. "Ma'am, no one's building a casino. And based on these documents, he's legally allowed to use his side of the lake as he sees fit. Within local ordinances." Karen's face turned crimson, her words trembling with rage. "This isn't over. If the HOA can't control him, then I will. Mark my words." At that moment I realized Karen wasn't just angry, she was humiliated. And humiliation, in her world, was the deadliest wound of all. She needed to reassert her power, to remind everyone that she was the self-proclaimed guardian of the neighborhood. So she marched up to the officers again, eyes flashing. "Fine. If you won't arrest him, then I want a full investigation. He's polluting the lake. He's disturbing wildlife. He's probably violating environmental laws. Check his cooler. He could have alcohol in there." The crowd gasped, not because they believed her, but because of how desperate she sounded. The younger officer sighed. "Ma'am, fishing on his own property is not a crime. Having drinks on his boat isn't a crime either, unless he's operating a motorized vehicle under the influence. And it's a rowboat." That earned another round of chuckles from the neighbors. I couldn't resist a smile. "Want to check my cooler? It's just soda and sandwiches." The officer shook his head. "No need, sir." Karen's hands balled into fists. She had lost this battle, but I could see it in her eyes. She was already planning her next move. The dust had barely settled from Karen's police fiasco when the next chapter of her crusade began. I should have expected it. After all, Karen thrived on drama the way fish thrive on water. And sure enough, a week later, an official notice arrived in my mailbox. Mandatory HOA meeting. Attendance required. Now, normally, I avoided these meetings like the plague. They were little more than Karen's stage plays, lectures about grass length, trash can placement, and the color of mailboxes. But this time, I knew exactly why I was being summoned. When I walked into the community clubhouse, the room was already buzzing. Neighbors sat in folding chairs, whispering. At the front, Karen stood behind the podium, a stack of papers in hand, her expression tight and triumphant, as though she were about to unveil evidence that would finally bury me. "There he is," she said loudly the moment I entered. "The lake squatter." A ripple of chuckles moved through the crowd, but Karen didn't flinch. She slapped the podium. "This man thinks he owns our community lake. But as HOA president, I assure you, he does not." I stayed calm, taking a seat near the front. "Karen, we've already been through this." The police confirmed my deed. Her lips curled. "Oh, I've done my research." She held up a binder stuffed with highlighted pages. "According to Section 14B of the HOA bylaws, all residents must abide by community standards, including shared use of natural resources." "That lake is a resource," the crowd murmured. Some nodded, others rolled their eyes. I stood, Let's be clear. Your bylaws don't override state law or property rights. My deed is legally binding. The officers saw it, and so can anyone else who doubts it. I placed copies of my property map on the table in front of the board members. Gasps went around as people leaned closer. The boundary line was crystal clear. Half the lake was mine. Karen's face tightened. Even if that's true, it's disruptive. It ruins the harmony of our neighborhood. What if everyone suddenly claimed their own private part of the lake? From the back, a voice called out, "Well, unless we all own half a lake." I don't think that's possible. Laughter erupted, breaking the tension. Karen's jaw clenched, but she pushed forward. I moved to fine him for disturbing community peace. The board members exchanged uneasy looks. Finally, one cleared his throat. Karen, we can't fine someone for using their own property. That's illegal. The room burst into applause. Karen's face turned a dangerous shade of red. I thought it was over. But with Karen, nothing was ever over. If Karen couldn't win with the police, and she couldn't win with the HOA board, she only had one weapon left: escalation. And if you've ever dealt with someone like her, you know escalation is their favorite game. 2 days after the infamous meeting, I noticed something strange. A bright orange notice was taped to my mailbox. In big bold letters it read, "Violation, unauthorized use of community property. Fine, $500. I actually laughed out loud. The HOA board had already told her she couldn't fine me. But apparently, Karen had decided to issue her own official penalty. Signed at the bottom, in dramatic handwriting, was none other than her name, Karen L., HOA President. That was the moment I realized she'd gone too far. This wasn't just annoying anymore, it was fraudulent. So I made a call, not to the police this time, but to my lawyer. A week later, Karen's world came crashing down. The letter she had taped to my mailbox? It wasn't just invalid. It was considered harassment. My lawyer sent her a cease and desist order, outlining the legal consequences if she continued her crusade. And because she had tried to pass off a fake fine as an official HOA action, she was in violation of state HOA regulations. When the news spread through the neighborhood, it hit harder than any fishing rod I could have cast. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, was under investigation. At the next meeting, the same board that once trembled under her glare voted unanimously to strip her of her presidency. The gavel came down with a satisfying thunk, and just like that, Karen's reign was over. The crowd clapped, some even cheered. One neighbor whispered, "About time." Another leaned over to me and said, "Guess the lake's all yours now." Karen stormed out of the clubhouse, red-faced and fuming, muttering about conspiracies and betrayal. But the truth was plain. Her obsession with controlling me had backfired so spectacularly that she'd lost everything she'd built her little empire on. And me? Well, I got to keep my lake. No fines, no restrictions, no harassment. Just peaceful mornings with my fishing rod, the sound of water lapping against my boat, and the knowledge that sometimes the best revenge is simply standing your ground. Looking back, it's almost funny. All I wanted was a quiet day on the water. Karen wanted control. In the end, the lake didn't just belong to me. It became the stage where her downfall played out for everyone to see. And the best part? The police, the HOA, and the law had all taken my side. Karen had called the cops on me over a lake and lost everything. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, drop a like, and share it with a friend who's had their own run-in with an HOA. More unbelievable moments are on the way. See you in the next one.